Subscribe to my YouTube channel because what happens in this story will leave you speechless. The city buzzed with life, its streets crowded with people rushing through their daily routines, unaware of the extraordinary story about to unfold. Among them was Emma, a young girl no older than 16, her oversized hoodie barely shielding her from the bitter evening wind. She walked carefully along the sidewalk, her eyes scanning the ground, not in curiosity, but out of habit. Life had taught her to be observant, to notice things others ignored. Sometimes, finding a lost coin or an abandoned receipt with a small discount meant the difference between a meal and another night of hunger. But today, she found something far more valuable. Lying near the curb, almost blending in with the shadows, was a sleek black leather wallet. It looked expensive, the kind that belonged to people who never worried about money. Emma hesitated before picking it up. Her fingers trembled as she turned it over, feeling the weight of something that didn't belong to her. A part of her whispered that she should walk away, pretend she never saw it. But another part, the part her mother raised her with, knew what she had to do. She opened the wallet carefully. Inside were crisp $100 bills, a black credit card with an unfamiliar name, and a driver's license that made her breath hitch. The face on the card wasn't just anyone. He was Alexander Pierce, the billionaire investor whose name was constantly flashing on news screens. The man who owned half the skyscrapers in the city. Emma swallowed hard. This wasn't just some lost wallet. This was a fortune that could change her life in an instant. For a moment, her stomach clenched with the cruel thought, what if she kept it? No one would know. No one had seen her pick it up. With this much money, she could buy food, pay the rent her family was struggling with, maybe even get her little brother the medicine he desperately needed. But as quickly as the thought came, she pushed it away. Instead, she reached into her backpack, pulling out an old scrap of paper. With a small pencil, the only writing tool she owned, she scribbled a note, her hands shaking as she wrote. She folded the note carefully, tucking it inside the wallet before gripping it tightly. She didn't know if billionaires cared about honesty, but she was about to find out. By the time Emma arrived at the massive glass building that bore Alexander Pierce's name, her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. The security guard at the entrance raised an eyebrow at her worn-out clothes, his gaze skeptical as she stepped forward. I need to return something to Mr. Pierce, she said, holding up the wallet. The guard looked unimpressed. Do you have an appointment? No, but before she could explain, a deep voice cut through the lobby. What's going on? The moment Emma turned around, she knew she was in trouble. Alexander Pierce himself stood there, his piercing, blue eyes locked on her, like she was a puzzle he had yet to solve. His tailored suit was perfect. Not a single wrinkle in sight, and yet there was something tired about his expression, like a man who had everything but still carried the weight of the world. Emma's throat went dry. I found your wallet, she managed to say, holding it out. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he reached for it, his fingers brushing against hers. You returned it. His voice held something more than surprise, something close to disbelief. Emma nodded. There's a note inside, she whispered. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't open the wallet just yet. You didn't take anything? No, she said firmly. I just thought you'd want it back. A flicker of curiosity crossed his face as he finally flipped open the wallet. His gaze moved past the money, the cards, until it landed on the folded piece of paper tucked inside. With deliberate care, he pulled it out and unfolded it. Emma watched, her hands clenching at her sides. She had no idea how he would react. Maybe he'd laugh. Maybe he wouldn't even care. But the moment his eyes scanned the words, everything changed. His sharp, unreadable expression faltered. His fingers tightened around the note. For the first time, the powerful billionaire looked shaken. Emma had written only a few simple words. I didn't take anything, even though my family has nothing. My brother is sick, and we can't afford medicine. I just hope someone would do the same for me one day. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma couldn't read his expression anymore. Was he angry? Amused? Annoyed that some random girl had tried to make him feel something? Then, suddenly, he did something she never expected. Alexander Pierce looked up from the note, his gaze locking onto hers with an intensity that made her want to shrink back. You're coming with me, he said, his voice firm. Emma blinked. What? But he was already moving, signaling for his assistant to follow. She had only come to return a wallet. She had no idea her life was about to change forever. Emma hesitated. She wasn't sure if she had heard him right. Wait, what? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander Pierce was already walking, his long strides making it clear he expected her to follow. His assistant, a woman with sharp eyes and a tablet pressed against her chest, glanced at Emma but said nothing. Emma's feet felt glued to the marble floor. What was happening? She had returned his wallet, left her note, and now he wanted her to go with him. She should have said no. She should have turned around and walked out of there. But something about the way he had looked at her, the way his expression had shifted when he read her note, made her curious. So, against all logic, she forced her legs to move and followed. The elevator ride was silent. The assistant stood on one side, Alexander on the other. Emma stood in the middle, feeling smaller than ever. The numbers blinked as they ascended floors after floor, and with each passing second, her heartbeat grew louder. Finally, the doors slid open, revealing an office so massive it barely looked real. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed the entire city, the buildings below looking like tiny toy models. A sleek black desk sat in the center, covered in neatly stacked documents, and behind it, a fireplace crackled softly, filling the space with warmth. Alexander walked straight to the window, staring out at the skyline. Emma stood awkwardly near the entrance, unsure what to do. The assistant set her tablet down and left without a word, closing the door behind her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Alexander turned, still holding the note in his hand. You wrote this? Emma swallowed. Yes. His gaze was unreadable. Your brother? He's sick? She nodded. Asthma. He needs a special inhaler. We couldn't afford the last one, so… She hesitated. I wasn't lying. We really don't have anything. Alexander's fingers tightened around the paper, but his face remained calm. And yet you didn't take the money. Emma shifted on her feet. It wasn't mine. A long silence followed. She wasn't sure what he was thinking. Did he think she was stupid? Did he think she had made up the story to get sympathy? Finally, he sighed and walked over to his desk. He opened a drawer, pulled out a checkbook, and clicked his pen. How much do you need? Emma's breath hitched. What? For your brother's medicine. How much? She felt her stomach twist. This wasn't why she had written the note. She hadn't expected anything in return. I don't know. Alexander didn't look convinced. Then let's make it easy. He scribbled something onto the check, tore it off, and held it out. This should cover more than just medicine. Emma didn't move. She couldn't. She had spent years scraping by, watching her mother work herself to the bone, feeling helpless as her little brother struggled to breathe on nights when they couldn't afford his inhaler. And now, out of nowhere, a billionaire was handing her a check like it was nothing. Her fingers twitched, but she didn't take it. Why? Alexander's expression flickered. Just for a second. Something unreadable passing through his eyes. Then, his lips pressed into a thin line. Because I know what it's like to have nothing. That answer sent a chill through her. She hadn't expected that. Billionaires weren't supposed to know struggle. They weren't supposed to understand what it was like to go to bed hungry or to feel the weight of desperation pressing down on their chest. And yet, there was something in his voice that told her he wasn't lying. Emma stared at the check again. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life. It could change everything. But instead of reaching for it, she looked up at him and asked, "Is money how you fix everything?" Alexander's hand froze mid-air. No one had ever asked him that before. His whole life, people had come to him for money. They had begged. They had schemed. They had convinced themselves that a check with his name on it was the solution to all their problems. And most of the time, they weren't wrong. But Emma's question cut through him in a way he hadn't expected. Slowly, he lowered the check. "No," he admitted. "But it's a start." Emma bit her lip, uncertainty flashing in her eyes. This wasn't just about her. If she took the money, she could help her brother, help her mother. But deep down, she felt like taking it would change something inside her. Something she wasn't ready for. Alexander must have seen the hesitation in her face, because instead of pushing the check toward her again, he leaned back in his chair, studying her. "How old are you?" 16. "You in school?" She looked away. "I was." His jaw tightened. "And now?" Emma sighed. "I had to drop out. My mom needed help with my brother, and the bills kept piling up. I tried to get a job, but no one wants to hire a kid who doesn't have experience." Alexander exhaled slowly, drumming his fingers against the desk. "So, if I were to offer you something other than a check, would you take it?" Emma frowned. "Like what?" "A job." Her eyes widened. "A job?" He nodded. "Not charity, not a handout, an actual job." Emma's mind raced. This was crazy. Completely insane. She wasn't qualified for anything. What could she possibly do for someone like him? But instead of rejecting the idea, she asked, "What kind of job?" Alexander's lips curled into something close to a smirk. "You'll find out." And just like that, Emma realized her life had just taken a turn she never could have imagined. Emma sat frozen in her seat, her heart pounding in her chest. A job? Working for him. The idea felt unreal. She had walked into this building just hoping to return a lost wallet, and now she was being offered a chance to change her life. She hesitated. "I don't understand. What kind of job could I possibly do for you?" Alexander leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "I don't know yet, but I know people. I know who's worth investing in, and I think you are." Emma's throat tightened. No one had ever said something like that to her before. Most people barely noticed her. She was just a girl from a run-down neighborhood, struggling to keep her family afloat. But here was a billionaire, telling her she was worth something. She still didn't trust it. "What if I mess up?" He smirked. "Then you'll learn. Just like everyone else." Emma stared at him, trying to find some catch, some hidden reason for why he was doing this. But all she saw was certainty, like he had already made up his mind about her. She took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll do it." A flicker of approval crossed his face. "Good. You start tomorrow." She didn't know what she had just gotten herself into. But one thing was clear. Her life would never be the same again. The next morning, Emma walked into the towering skyscraper, her nerves on edge. A uniformed receptionist greeted her, handing her a badge with her name on it. She clipped it onto her worn-out hoodie, feeling out of place among the sharply dressed employees. who passed by without a second glance. Before she could second-guess everything, Alexander's assistant appeared, motioning for her to follow. She led Emma down a long hallway and into an office, not nearly as big as Alexander's, but still more luxurious than anything Emma had ever seen. "This will be your space," the woman said briskly. "For now, you'll be handling small tasks, emails, schedules, errands. Mr. Pierce will assign more responsibilities if he sees potential." Emma blinked. My space? She had never even had her own bedroom before, let alone an office. She sat in the chair hesitantly, running her fingers over the smooth surface of the desk. It felt like a dream, one she was afraid to wake up from. And just when she thought things couldn't get more surreal, the door swung open and Alexander walked in. "Ready for your first task?" he asked, amusement in his voice. Emma straightened. "Yes." He slid a file across her desk. "I want you to go through this. Research everything. I need to know if this deal is worth my time." She glanced at the pages. Names, numbers, reports that meant little to her. I don't really know how to do this." Alexander shrugged. "Then figure it out." Emma clenched her jaw. If he expected her to give up, he was wrong. She may not have had experience, but she had fought through worse challenges in her life, so she got to work. Days turned into weeks, and Emma pushed herself harder than she ever had before. She stayed late, asked questions, and studied everything she could, and slowly, she began to understand. She learned to spot the difference between a good deal and a bad one. She figured out how to manage schedules, handle pressure, and hold her ground in meetings where people underestimated her. But more than that, she changed. She walked taller. She spoke with more confidence. She no longer felt like the poor girl who didn't belong, and Alexander noticed. One evening, as the office emptied out, he stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker below. Emma was packing up her things when he spoke. "You did good today," he said. She froze surprised. Praise from him wasn't common. "Thanks." He turned to look at her. "You know, when I first met you, I wasn't sure if you'd make it." Emma smirked. "Neither was I." A rare chuckle escaped him. Then his expression grew serious. "But you did, and you'll keep going." Emma swallowed. She knew he was right. This job had given her more than just a paycheck. It had given her a future. She thought about her mother, who no longer had to work multiple shifts, about her brother, who finally had the medicine he needed, and about herself, the girl who had once been scared to dream, but now stood in a world she never thought she'd reach. She looked at Alexander, the man who had taken a chance on her, and nodded. "Yeah, I will." And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it.